Good afternoon, it's Alex from Infant Feeding, doing the Infant Feeding Facebook Live session today. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me or see me. I haven't seen any faces coming up yet. It's the usual session. I'm going to be talking about answering any questions that you might have about feeding, and just giving you information that I think might help in between times, getting feeding off to a good start, whether you've already got your baby or whether you're expecting your baby in the next few weeks or whatever, or months. And I said it's the infant feeding session. I can see lots of faces arriving. Lovely, nice to see people. Thanks for the thumbs up. It's infant feeding, so it's specific to infant feeding and those early days and dealing with your baby and all those sort of things. So not really here to answer anything more to do with labour and birth, etc., or visiting, etc. So this is very, very specific to infant feeding, early days, coping with your babies, things that you might have questions about before your babies come, all those sort of things. So start firing away with your questions. I thought we'd have a quick talk about today, whilst I wait for questions to come through, about one of the things that we always hear from, or often hear from people about, hearing conflicting advice. It's one of the things that we hear about quite often, and when feedback comes through from the Oxfordshire Maternity Voices Partnership, and that is something that quite a few mums talk about, that they feel that they maybe have given conflicting advice, and it's thinking about whether it's actually conflicting advice that you're getting, or whether it's just because it's a changing situation. Because when your baby's born, things really do change radically. In those first few days, your baby's needs and wants change radically. Your milk supply changes radically. So we're going from a baby that's got a really tiny weeny tummy, and I know I've talked about this before, tiny weeny tummy of literally the size of a marble. See if I don't drop them today. So of a tiny weeny marble of a newborn baby, going up to, sort of about a week or so, and you've got that much bigger. So we're talking, you can see the difference there, that actually what we're talking about, what a baby needs in those first hours after birth, is tiny weeny amounts. Colostrum is a food in concentrate. It's this absolutely amazing product. I describe it as golden syrup because it's thick, it's gloopy, it's golden in colour, and it's everything a baby needs in the first few days or so. And then in line with that, as the baby's tummy's growing, because by day 3 we've already got a baby's tummy that's gone to this, that by the time we've got to day 3 and that stomach has grown this much, mum's milk is beginning to come in, and so it's working in parallel. So when we talk to people and say, oh well, in the first 24 hours your baby may only need a tiny weeny amount of colostrum, that changes each day, and so people sometimes take that as conflicting advice because it's going to change very radically. I can see questions coming through already. Thank you, Holly. I'm going to pull it up here. In fact, I can see more than one. That's lovely. It's nice to have some questions already. Let's just see what we've got going on. I've got them on my computer, so I don't have to touch the camera because otherwise I'll knock it off. So Holly has said, hi there, I'm pregnant with MCDA twins and my C-section is scheduled for 34 weeks. I'm currently 32 plus 3. Oh, it's looming. And wondering when I could start trying to express the colostrum. Thank you. So we would not be recommending you to do it early, because actually there is a risk, a small risk, very small, but there is a risk of putting you into early labour. So really and truly, I think you would be hanging off until the last minute. So if you're due to be having a C-section at 34 weeks, I'd be thinking about that morning, maybe having a go at expressing in that morning. We've had a leaflet printed, it's taken a little while, it's up and it's available. If you look at our website, there's a leaflet about expressing in the antenatal period. I think it's called Collecting Milk when you're pregnant, or collecting colostrum, when you're pregnant. So we wouldn't be recommending you do anything too soon, Holly. We don't want you to be having 32-week babies. We'd much rather that you have, that you hold off right until perhaps the morning of your C-section, and do some that morning when you come in, because you'll have a bit of time and you'll be able to get a little bit off then. So I would hold off as much as you can. And remember that we have DBM, so we always talk about this on this session. You know, we have DBM, your babies would qualify for DBM. So if for any reason your babies need more milk than you're able to get at this point in time when they're born, then actually we'll make DBM available for your babies. So don't worry in that respect, but we don't want you having your babies any earlier than 34 weeks. So hold off, please, until you come in. And that morning, by all means, have a go. When you come in, you'll go into the elective section bay. There'll be someone there to help you. They can talk you through it and you can have a go then. So see how you get on. All right, Holly's just come back, so she's worried about, thanks for clarifying. Don't worry about it, it's just she hasn't seen any yet. Don't worry about it. Many people don't see any. That does not mean anything. If your body has been able to hang on to a pregnancy, and you know you're pregnant, your babies are due in a few weeks' time, then there's no reason why you won't produce colostrum. So believe in yourself. It will happen. Come in with a positive mental attitude. We always talk about this. How you come into feeding is really important. Believe your body's capable of having had these babies. Your body is capable of feeding these babies. So come in positively on that one, Holly. Just going back up, because I know there are some other questions coming through already. So I think Delan was the next one. So he says, if a baby's on the breast and on formula, very rarely does the baby need multivitamin, which is best, and 2 months and 17 days should drink how many ounces? So when it comes to vitamins, so for instance, vitamin D is one that's something that many babies will need, and it's not because as women that our milk is deficient. It's because we in the Western Hemisphere are deficient of vitamin D. So we have barely enough for ourselves, let alone giving some to our babies. So if you're also giving your baby formula milk, if you're giving more than 500 mils a day, then you don't need to give vitamin D supplements. If your baby's having less than 500 mils formula milk a day, then you need to be giving vitamin D supplements. So any mum who is exclusively breastfeeding or mixed feeding and giving less than 500 mils a day of formula milk should be giving vitamin D supplements. That's the one we would be thinking about. And with regard to the age of your baby and how much milk your baby's you're needing, then that really is a case of following your baby, because babies are all different, how much they need. You know, it's a case of watching and seeing, is your baby pooing and weeing appropriate to age? We talk about this a lot. You know, we're looking for your baby to be having at least 2 yellow stools a day, minimum £2 coin size, and 6 very heavy wet nappies a day. So wet that you can feel them, that you have a clean nappy in one hand and take the nappy off and feel it in the other and go, yeah, that's heavy, I can feel it. And if you're not really sure and you'd think, well, I don't know if I can tell, go and get a tablespoon of water and put a couple of them into a clean nappy, then feel it. Now, that's what you want to be feeling, and 6 of those a day is what we would consider normal. So rather than thinking about ounces, think about, is my baby meeting their milestones? Are they pooing and weeing appropriate to age? And are they gaining weight appropriate to age? So we don't need babies to be weighed very frequently, but we do need to have weights once in a while to be sure the baby's gaining. If we're concerned about a baby's weight gain, then we would be looking at weekly weights. So thinking about having a baby weighed weekly. So liaise with your health visitor on that one. So Delan, I hope that helps. So with regard to volumes, it very much depends what's happening, how much they're taking from the breast, and making sure they're meeting their milestones, not being too hung up about amounts. And remembering that babies, like adults, need varying amounts from one feed to the next and one day to the next. So we want to feed them responsibly, meeting what their needs are. So see how you get on with that, Delan. And obviously contact your health visitor. You know, your health visitors will be able to help. So Justina's come through and said her baby struggles with latching and doesn't like to be held behind the shoulders during feeding. How can I help my baby latch through sideline feeding or recline feeding without supporting her shoulder significantly? So we would probably suggest that you try that laid back feeding that we've talked about before on these sessions. You know, I know Naomi's done some great demonstrations of it. And that's where you'd be holding your baby more like this. They're not up here, you're holding them down here. So fingers behind the back and thumbs round where the nipples are. And that actually you're going to put them, let me see if I can tip the camera a little bit so you can see. So you're going to put them sitting on your lap. I'll stand and do it. So they'd be sitting on your lap, so they'd be in this position. So you can just bring them in like that. So rather than having anything up here, you're down here and you're going to push your baby in from there. And if I were going to lie down, I would literally, it would be exactly the same. Whereas this arm would be in the way. You take it up. This is the hand that's going to push your baby in. And you're going to do it from the small of their back, well, sort of just below their shoulders rather than any higher. And just bearing in mind, if you are doing the more traditional, positions where you're holding your baby, thinking about making sure your hand is nice and low, so it's right down here. Babies don't like to be held up here, so think about how are you holding your baby. I talk about that as the hairdresser's sink. So if you look at the sinks, when you tip your head back into the sink, that's your hairdresser's sink. You're going to bring it down and down here, right below the neck, not up here. So maybe it might be worth just trying dropping your hand a little lower if your baby doesn't like to be held that way, and see how you get on. But if you want to do a more upright or laid back position, holding them like this works really, really well, because some babies really don't like to be handled. And that's often babies that have been born by forceps or ventouse birth. If you think about it, the pressure that's been on their heads, so they much prefer to be held further down. So try that and see how you get on with it. And I hope that helps. See how you get on with it. Holly's come back and just, we did that one. So Natalie has put a question up. So, do I have any advice and suggestions on getting off to a positive start with breastfeeding? I breastfed my first baby for 6 months, but had a really tough time to begin with. His latch was fine, but my supply came in quickly. It took a while to establish. He was very sleepy, not an efficient feeder, and he lost a lot of weight. So this time around, I'm keen to get off to a better start early on. So I think, one of these things that we talk about in these sessions, and my colleagues Naomi and Hannah and I have all talked about, and Lisa, is making sure you have that milk supply. So the time critical thing when it comes to feeding is ensuring you have a milk supply. So if you've got any problems with your baby not effectively removing milk from the breast, you need to do it. Get that milk moving, because you have a 2-week window from birth, and it's like there's a ticking clock in the breast. The breasts know when that baby was born, so that clock is starting ticking when the baby's born, and you've got that 2-week window to really maximise your milk supply. So working on your milk supply in that period of time is utterly crucial. Not removing milk in that period of time, if the baby's not doing a good job, you're not expressing because the baby's not doing a good job, you end up with a situation where you're playing catch up. So really, really working on ensuring, if you think the baby's not doing a good job, get hand expressing. Once the milk comes in, maybe use a pump and just get that milk supply going. We only do that if we think there's a problem. So get some support, get someone to watch how you're feeding, make sure that baby's going on as well as you can. And it's wonderful that you managed to feed your baby for 6 months after having had, quite a difficult start. And that's lovely to hear. But it'd be nice to think you didn't have a difficult start this time. And remember this time, Natalie, that obviously what's going to happen is your understanding and your knowledge of feeding is going to be so much higher than where you were last time. You know so much more about feeding this time. So with all that wonderful information you already have, if you think there's any reason your baby's not removing milk effectively, watch those nappies. That's one of your best ways of knowing, is your baby pooing and weeing appropriate to the age that it is? If it's not, get more milk in your baby. And the wonderful thing about that will be you will really push your milk supply, and you'll have that milk to give your baby, so that they are going to hopefully prevent becoming jaundiced. They're going to get good volumes of milk going into them. They're going to be alert, and then they're going to feed more effectively. And it becomes a really, really virtuous cycle, because they're getting that bit more milk. So see how you get on. Seek support early on, Natalie. You know what's right now, and just get that help as early as you can. I hope that helps. Let me carry on down. I can see comments coming on through. Thank you very much. Charlotte has said, I'm 38 and 5 days. Oh, due any day. Pregnant and still breastfeeding with my 16-month-old. Will I produce colostrum or not? Do I need to stop breastfeeding my older daughter? Thank you. You do not need to stop feeding your older daughter. And in fact, actually, often when people do what you will be doing, which is called tandem feeding, the older child will often stop themselves, because it does go back to colostrum. So it is already back to colostrum. The thing to bear in mind, though, when you do have this new baby, is always give that baby the breast first. Let them get the first milk, and then let your older baby go on afterwards. If when your milk comes in somewhere between days 3 and 5, if you're struggling at all, you can always use your older child to help with engorgement and get the milk moving. But predominantly, we would suggest to you that it's always the baby that gets the first chance at the breast before the older one, because otherwise the older one can remove it all, and the baby's not got what it's needed. So Charlotte, fantastic. It's lovely to hear that you're going to be tandem feeding. Absolutely no reason why it couldn't carry on, because very often at this stage, if the older one wasn't going to carry on, it would have already happened because your milk's already back to colostrum. So yes, you've got colostrum and you can tandem feed. And if you want to meet people who are probably doing something very similar, the latch League, which is very active here in Oxfordshire, will have other mums who are doing similar to you. So you could make contact with the latch, and I'm sure they would be very happy to support you as well. But well done, Charlotte. Fantastic. And look forward to having your next baby. Moving on. So Abby's come through and said her 12-week-old baby is exclusively breastfed, and during his daytime naps he's recently started wanting to feed when he's tired and then falls asleep with the breast and seems to be sucking for comfort. If I try to take him off, he then starts crying and won't go back to sleep. We've tried giving him a dummy, but he doesn't seem to like it. Any suggestions on how to deal with this? Thanks. Well, first off, the breast came first, dummies came second. Dummies are the breast replacement. So yeah, I'll just get that out there, because actually that babies do feed for comfort. Difficult one really, but I think it's a case of just going with your baby as much as you can and hoping that it's just a bit of a phase, that they're going to stop doing that they're going to allow you to remove the breast when they're having a sleep, because obviously that probably is quite prime time for you. You've probably got a few things you want to be getting done at that point in time. So I think it's just, hopefully it will pass. If using the dummy is something you want to carry on with, you could try it again, but obviously the dummy is a poor relation to your wonderful breast. Your baby loves being at the breast, and babies all love being there. It's a difficult one. I mean, it's wonderful that your baby's doing so well and is exclusively breastfed and 12 weeks, 3 months now. How wonderful. I think it's a case of just see and hope, if this has only just started happening, that your baby will then pass. It will pass as well. Maybe your baby's got a bit of a cold or something going on and just needs that extra reassurance that you're nearby, and needs to know you're right there for them, and see how see how things progress. Babies tend to sort of go into a fairly light sleep initially and then drop into a deep sleep. So you might find delaying trying to remove your breast from the baby's mouth might help. So let them stay there for a bit and then try removing after about 20 minutes and see if you can manage to remove the breast at that stage when they're in a slightly more deeper sleep, and see how you get on with that. I don't think I'm giving you a huge amount of help here. I'm really sorry, apart from reassuring you that it's quite a normal behaviour and that it should pass, Abby. So I'm going to wish you all the best with that and hope things get a bit better for you. Delanne's come back and she said when I'm feeding her, she doesn't finish 3 ounces. But that's fine. That means she's getting milk from the breast, Delanne, which is lovely. So 3 ounces is about 120 mils. So we anticipate baby will have somewhere between 80 and 150 mils when they're feeding, from a feed that goes on stomach sizes. So I think your baby's probably being very normal in that respect. So she's obviously getting milk from the breast and then milk from the bottle as well. So just follow her, Delanne, and see how she gets on. I say she, oh, it is she. I was thinking I was deciding whether she was a boy or a girl, but she is a girl. So just see how you get on. Let her tell you. That's responsive feeding. Let her tell you. Sometimes it will be more, sometimes it will be less. And that's the same as you. Sometimes you'll eat a big lunch and sometimes you'll have a smaller lunch. So that's all very normal. Alex has come through with a question saying her son, who's 15 days old, is in a lot of pain after each feed, taking up to about an hour and a half to settle even after winding. He's also very sick after feeds. Again, this can be up to a few hours after the end of the feed. He's formula fed and has roughly 16 ounces a day. Do you have any advice on what might be causing this? I think I'd have a look at how the way that you're feeding him. Just have a quick peek. Just thinking about, we've talked about it on these sessions before, me and my colleagues. Thinking about making sure that you've got him in an upright position. So when we're responsibly bottle feeding a baby, we have them in an upright position, and we brush their lips with the teat, and then we keep the bottle as horizontal as we can, ensuring that what's in the baby's mouth is full rather than worrying about the whole teat. So you may already be doing this, and sorry if you are, but it's just a bit of revision. What we don't really want is a baby who's laid fat and a bottle up, because what happens then is a baby takes in a lot more food than they want to, and they don't have any chance to stop when they need to. So if you bring your baby upright and brush down and get them to gape, and then introduce the bottle, ensuring that what's in the baby's mouth is full but not the whole tea. So as you get less and less in the bottle, you will have to tip it up, but when there's a lot in the bottle, it really needs to be like this, so that your baby can feed at their own speed. Because what happens is, when it's in this position, the milk keeps pouring out into the baby's mouth. They can't control the flow, they can't take a breath when they need to, and they can be very easily overfed. So being in this position puts the baby in charge. They're up in close, upright, got that lovely distance where you can look at them, boost their oxytocin, help build their brain growth, because oxytocin builds babies' brains. But they can also control the flow and take the feed at their own speed. It's called paced bottle feeding or responsive bottle feeding, and it makes it a much nicer experience for the baby. So if you're not doing that, it might be well worth trying that, Alex. And obviously then doing the winding afterwards. Though we know this makes a big difference, and teaching anyone else who's feeding your baby, and ideally it's really only you and one other, because feeding is such a crucial time for that baby bonding time, that relationship building time, that actually ideally it's just you and another partner probably, and making sure that you're both doing it the same way, and that they're able to control the flow, because we know it's so easy to overfeed a baby with a bottle. So if you do it this way, you're much less likely to overfeed the baby, and your baby will be able to have a break when they need to breathe, because babies in the first few days and weeks are struggling to get their head round and cope with suck, swallow, breathe, suck, swallow, breathe. So it might be there's a bit of that going on. If things are still not going well, then perhaps you could contact us for an Attend Anywhere online consultation, and we can watch what's happening and see if we can help at all with that, and see if there's any other reason your baby's struggling. But it's really tough. I can imagine, having a baby that's so upset after the feeds, because that's really what you don't expect. You expect them to be happy and calm and enjoying, being a nice full feeling. So see how you get on, but do seek further support if you need it. Try the responsive or paced bottle feeding, and do get in touch if you need more support with this, Alex, because I can imagine it's quite challenging. Good luck with it. Justina has just come back and said, thank you, that's perfect, brilliant. Delanne's come back. Is it possible that baby's teething 2 plus 17, her head is hot? So it's very, very rare for a baby to be teething at 2 months of age. They really don't normally come through. I'm not going to say it never happens, but it's very rare. It would be much more likely that it would be around 6 months. If her head is hot, I think you need to be thinking about, is she well? Do you need to get her checked out? If you've got any concerns, contact your GP and just get her checked out. Could she be brewing a bit of a bug? Could she have a cold? But teething would be probably one of the least likely things happening at this stage. I don't normally teeth this early. It isn't normal. That I would be looking at other reasons that she's feeling like that. So have a look at the process and maybe contact your GP, Delanne. Justina's come back and said her baby was born with a kiwi cup. Yeah, that's quite common. I mean, if you imagine it, she's had for anyone who doesn't know, kiwi is what's called kiwi is a type of ventouse, and it's like a suction cup that's put onto the back of the baby's head, and it's helps the mum to deliver the baby. But there's quite a lot of pressures done when they do it. The babies are, cope with it, but it is quite a lot of pressure, and some babies after a forceps delivery or a ventouse delivery do not like being touched anywhere near their head, and that's where we would definitely be suggesting this more sort of lower hold in an upright position, because then the baby's head is totally free. So yeah, I'm not surprised, Justina, that your baby's struggling a little bit. She's only born on the 2nd, so she's only 10 days old. So she's going to get lots better in the meantime. Babies heal so quickly. It'll get much, much better, Justina. But if you are still struggling, access help. Don't sit and struggle on your own. Get more help. Remember, I always give them a plug. Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, OBS, available online. They do wonderful support, online support. You might be talking to Jane or Charlotte or Lisa. There's an absolutely brilliant team out there. And there's also the Abingdon Baby Cafe with Sue Richards. She does a fantastic job as well. They're all out there. They're all lactation consultants. They're all really good at what they do. They do fantastic support. So, any of you that I said get support, do by all means try these people. And the Latch League are also amazing as well. We are so lucky in Oxfordshire to have Abingdon Baby Cafe, Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support and the Latch League all out there supporting you. So please don't struggle on your own. Get help. The earlier you get help, the quicker things turn around and things get better. Sarah's come on and said, my baby's cluster feeding most days. Is lanolin okay to use frequently and in between every feed, even though it's only a short gap? The packaging says it's okay, but I'm concerned my baby will consume too much. I'm really finding it useful, so would like to continue if it's okay. It is thought to be okay, Sarah. If you think you've got a lot on your nipple, we would suggest you wipe off any excess. Thinking about sort of just, if you can see it there, just take off any excess, but just being aware not to put mouthfuls of it in your baby's mouth, but it is thought to be okay. My only thing about it is, if you're saying that you're having to use it, are you sore? Do you need some more help? Do you need someone to watch your positioning and attachment and just see if we can make it even better for you? I'm sure you're doing an absolutely brilliant job, but we do know that positioning and attachment, a millimetre here or a millimetre there makes such a difference. And I know I do it every time on this programme. I get my leaflets out with my pictures in, and we show you that picture because this is so important. It's remembering that a baby needs to go on chin leading, head tip back, upper lip just skimming the nipple, and the nipple is literally up here, top of the baby's mouth. If the baby's mouth, let me just grab my breath. If the nipple goes into the centre, it gets stuck between a hard palate and a rasping tongue, and this is what happens to the breast. So this is why people get sore. The reason that we talk about this picture is, the wrong way round. That one is because we want the nipple right up there, so under the upper lip, so that it goes right to the back where it's nice and soft against your soft palate, and this happens and you won't be sore. So that's why I'm saying, if you're using lanolin, it's probably because you are a bit sore, but actually can we make it so you're not sore and therefore don't even need to use the lanolin? So maybe thinking about getting some more help, Sarah. You're saying with the cluster feeds, I know cluster feeds are particularly difficult, because it's one feed after another and you don't get a reprieve and they're going left, right, left, right, left, right. But making sure that we can get your baby on in such a way that you're not sore and therefore don't need to use lanolin. So Sarah, if you haven't accessed someone like Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, then they would really be able to help you with this. They can do an online consultation, watch what you're doing and make suggestions to help make it more comfortable for you, and then you wouldn't hopefully need to use it. Okay, so we'll deal with the problem rather than the lanolin as such. So good luck with that, Sarah, and I hope things get a bit better, because a tiny weeny change could make all the difference for you and you may not need to use any more. Imi's come on. Hello, Imi. She's one of our regulars. She said she hopes I'm well. Just a question with the nappies. Is it 6 wet nappies in 24 hours? Yes, please, Imi. So yeah, we're looking for 6 heavy wet nappies in a 24-hour period. And from 5 days to 6 weeks, we really want to be seeing 2 minimum sized £2 coins yellow poos. So 2 poos a day, 6 heavy wet nappies up to 6 weeks. The wet ones will continue after 6 weeks. The poos might drop off a little bit. You might find that baby may go a little bit longer between poos after 6 weeks, and that's fairly normal. But up to 6 weeks, daily poos and 6 heavy wet nappies daily is a really, really good sign your baby's getting enough food. Charlotte said thank you, and that information helped. Good, glad to hear it. Jessica's come on now. She said, hello, my baby boy is almost 3 weeks and his weight at the moment is 4 kg and he's only on formula. He's eating around 90 mils every 3 hours, more or less. Is the amount okay for him? For how long is he supposed to eat that amount? How will I know when to increase? again, I'm going to say responsive feeding. Watch him, see what he's looking for. He's going to want more. The way it works with formula is it's a finite amount of nutrients in a finite amount of liquid. So in order to give him more nutrients, you have to give him more volume. So he's going to start looking for more, so just offer it to him. So watch and see what he does. You might find he's looking for a feed sooner than he did previously. He might be coming to the end of the feed and he's still looking for more, so watch him and see what he wants over the day, and you'll probably find the volumes do go up a bit. That's where it differs from breastfeeding, because the volumes with breastfeeding, once you get to a few weeks, they really don't change all the way through to 6 months and a year. So the constituents of breast milk continue to change to meet the baby's needs in the same amount of volume, whereas formula milk, you have to keep increasing it because it's an amount of constituents in an amount of liquid. So just watch him, Jessica, and see what your baby's looking for. You know, it will go up. He will want a little bit more over a period of time, and just see what he's looking for, and see, you know, get him weighed once in a while. Check his nappies. Make sure he's still doing enough nappies, and you know, wet ones and dirty ones, and that will be your indicator as to whether he's looking for more food. But he'll tell you, and that's all about that relationship you're building with your baby, getting to know each other. That he'll say to you, "Mum, I want more," and he'll cry maybe at the end of the feed because he's finished. He's looking for more, or he's looking for food more frequently than he was previously. So just go with him, Jessica, and he will talk to you and tell you in his own way. I hope that helps. Alex has come back again. She said, thank you very much. She'll try pace feeding and get in touch if she's still struggling. Brilliant, because we know pace feeding is really baby friendly. It's very much what a baby wants. It makes it a much nicer way of being fed. So Holly's come on again. So Holly said, hello, my girl is just over a week old now and has breastfed. Been going well so far, but I'm worried I'm not able to tell when she's finished a feed. Often I think she's finished, then 20 minutes to an hour later she'll be unsettled or display signs that she's hungry again. I always offer her more milk, which she takes. Am I thinking she's finished before she's ready, or is this cluster feeding rather than actively coming away? She just needs to unlatch slowly. Also at some point, so I'm just scanning down because it's dropping off the bottom of my page. Also at some point I'd like to introduce a bottle. I've read not to do this, start pumping until breastfeeding is established. How do I know when it is? Do you have any advice for starting pumping as whilst she's still only feeding from me? I don't want to take away any milk she might need that day. So let's start at the top and go through these. So thinking about the feeds, making sure she's finished. So she should come off on her own. So we anticipate a baby will come off, either just gently let the breast drop out of their mouth, or sometimes they can be really dramatic and they've got the breast in the mouth and they do it and off they come. We're sort of looking for babies to look a bit like this when they've finished, so that they're a bit comatose, because that's completely normal. We shouldn't be stopping the feed. So if a baby's on the breast and they're not doing very much, you can encourage them to do a bit more. So my colleague Sue Richards at the Abingdon Baby Cafe calls it the on switch. So when you're holding your baby and you're here and you've got the baby on at the breast and your baby's not done anything for a bit, just put a bit more pressure on the shoulders. There, just putting in. That's that part of my hand. I'm pushing from my heel of my hand, so I'm pushing from here. Just put a bit more pressure on and remind them why they're there, because they might be sitting there not doing very much, and you can say to them, say to the baby, come on, finish the feed, and you'll find what they'll do is they'll do a bit more. So you may not be doing this, you may not be taking your baby off, but if you are, try not to. Let your baby come off on their own. And think about the breastfeed as always 2 breasts offered. So they've come off one. Maybe think about changing a nappy and offering the second breast and see if that does it, because sometimes what happens is they'll do one breast and then a big gap and then another breast and then another gap. So actually really what we want to do is bring those two breasts together and bring it in as a feed. And even offering a third breast isn't a problem if your baby's still looking for more food. So it's offering the first, maybe rousing them a bit, give them the second. So even if you have to do a bit of a nappy change, because if you think they're going to rouse anyway, you may as well just rouse them a bit and just get them onto the second breast. So see if you can get your baby to take these feeds slightly more in a finite amount of time. So thinking about, can they do 1 and then 2, and then will they go a little bit longer between those feeds, so you're not feeling like you're doing constant little feeds throughout the day. So thinking about that, so that was that thing. Cluster feeding tends to be a 2-hour period. Usually most mums will describe cluster feeding as. It'll often be 6 till 8 in the evening, and it's often the evening. And the baby will be constantly feeding. They will literally be going left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And there's no satisfying them. You can't do anything with them. They just keep going, keep going. What they're getting when they're doing this is they're getting that really high fat. I'm going to show my picture again. Really high fat latter part of the feed. So the first part of the feed is the slightly more watery part, but when you get to cluster feeding, what they're getting is this. And we know in the evenings that babies tend to get much higher fat milk, not so much of it, but lots of high fat. So this is like a chocolate pudding with a teaspoon. So they're getting not huge volumes, but they're getting really high fat milk, which is brilliant, as long as they're on well. So thinking about the cluster feeds, that's what we're thinking when it's a cluster feed. If they're doing that throughout the day, i.e. it's not just a finite couple of hours, then actually we would be looking at feeding in its entirety. Is this baby going on well? Are they effectively feeding from the breast? Can we do anything to support you? Do we need to help boost your milk supply? So Holly, I think there needs to be a difference. Is she doing this all the time? And do we need to do something to help your milk supply and help her remove milk at the breast? Or is it just a little bit of cluster feeding, which is really very normal and will go on for a matter of weeks and then eventually stop? So it's thinking about that. So that was that first part of your question. You talked about introducing a bottle. So when they talk about establishing your milk supply, we tend to talk about sort of 6-ish weeks is when most women's milk supply is established. And because I said to you earlier, I mentioned earlier that the milk volume in the breast doesn't change, but what changes are the constituents. So once you've got to a full milk supply, which we think is in the region of 750 mils for most women, so it can be more than that or less than that, but the majority of women on average will produce 750 mils in a 24-hour period. Once you've got to that stage, then it doesn't change. It doesn't change whether that baby is now a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year or 2 years. That doesn't change. What's changing all the time to meet the baby's needs is what's in the milk. The constituents of the milk change to meet the baby's needs as they go on. And it's just as nutritious all the way through. It doesn't make any difference. So it's not our nutrition in our milk does not drop off. It's still really fabulous for a baby as to whether they are a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years and beyond. They're still getting nutrition from human milk, which is really beneficial. So thinking about establishing milk supply, we tend to think is around six weeks. And when you're thinking about if you're wanting to express, you can give a bottle. Most women find they have more milk than they need in the mornings. Despite the fact that they are feeding through the night, most women find they have a surplus in the morning. So the baby will feed in the morning and actually they can then pump off. So, and that way you're not taking it from the next feed. So that might be the way it works for you. Many mums do this as they feed in the morning, then they pump off what they can afterwards, and that milk then makes a feed maybe for later in the day. Some mums might use it during the cluster feeding period and let the partner give it. So that's possibly what would work for you. With a bottle, don't leave it too long to introduce. I would be thinking before 6 weeks, because actually babies they absolutely adore being breastfed. That's where they think they want to be, or they know they want to be. That's where they want to be. And actually sometimes it can be quite difficult to get a baby to take a bottle because they love to be breastfed. So maybe think about doing it, all around that 6 week mark would probably work really well. So pumping after you've fed in the morning, and maybe offering it if you are having cluster feeds in the evening. You could try it then, or whenever your partner would like to give a feed to, if that's why you're doing it, and that would allow you to have a bottle feed in the day. See how you get on, and think about what we talked about with the responsive bottle feeding earlier. That will make it a much nicer experience for a baby. We don't want flat babies and upright bottles. We want upright babies and horizontal bottles. So watch what we talked about earlier, and whoever's giving the bottle, if you can explain it to them. So I hope that helps, and I've answered all your questions on that, Holly. And obviously, as always, if you need more support, get in touch. There's plenty of people out there who'll be more than happy to support you, whether it's us or OBS or Abingdon Baby Cafe or the latch League. There are lots of people who will help you. Sarah's come back. Oh, she's going to try OBS. I would highly recommend them, Sarah. They're a fabulous bunch of people. We work really in close you know, we've very close relationships with Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support. In fact, it's in Oxfordshire with the health visiting team. There's Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, the Latch, Abingdon Baby Cafe, and ourselves, and we all work very closely together. And you know, and if things need to be escalated, then you're seeing someone from OBS and they feel that you benefit from being seen by us, well, they'll tell us and they'll tell you as well. So so you know, if you need to come and see us, that'll be arranged. So good luck with that, Sarah, and I hope things get a bit better for you. Jessica's put, thank you very much. What about poop while on formula? Is still supposed to be 2 a day, because sometimes we have 2 smaller and some days just 1 big, but bigger one with wet nappies, no problem. Yes, so we know that with formula fed babies, they tend to poo slightly less frequently, and the poo is different. So a breastfed baby's poo is going to be yellow, liquid with flecks in it, and it can vary in size from covering the nappy to back down to a £2 size coin, whereas a formula fed poo is going to be slightly more limey, greeny, yellowy. It's going to be more formed. So if you think about putty, the thing that holds the glass in the window frames of your house, that's putty. It's that soft, squidgy material. So that's when it's a formula fed baby that tends to be much more like that, and they tend to poo slightly less frequently than a breastfed poo does, a breastfed baby does. So you're looking at more formed, slightly more greeny, yellowy, as opposed to very yellow, and you know, sort of possibly slightly less frequently. But see how you get on. But the wheeze would be the same. We'd still be looking for 6 heavy wet nappies on a daily basis. So it sounds like your baby's ticking the boxes there, Jessica. So I don't know if we've got any concerns there. Carrying on, I can see there are more coming through. Natalie said 38+3 would like to try and express colostrum this week in terms of storing this. Should I freeze this, and how long does it last? Thank you. So Natalie, yes, freeze it. And 38+3, definitely go ahead and do some expressing of colostrum. If you have a look on our webpage, OUH, that's the OUH, Oxford University Hospitals Trust webpage, go to maternity and then choose feeding. On the feeding page, you will find a leaflet that we've just had printed. It's just gone up on the website this week, and it talks all about hand expressing. So it includes the storage. So the storage for colostrum is it can stay out at 24 hours at room temperature, and then it can go into the fridge for 5 days and into the freezer for 6 months. But bearing in mind your baby's not born yet, and we don't know when your baby's going to be born, I would probably suggest that you just pop it in the freezer. So collect it during the day. So you could do it maybe 4 times in the day, and collect it into either syringes or any sort of clean pot, anything you want to keep it in, it doesn't matter, and then pop it in the freezer at the end of each day. Date it so that we know what day it was collected, so we've got, you know, you can keep a record of it, and then when you come in to have your baby, please don't bring it all in. We have lots of problems where colostrum comes in because it has to be used within 12 hours. Sadly, if it's labours can often be more than 12 hours. It could be defrosted in that period of time, and then it has to be discarded. So ideally, bring it in a cool box with ice blocks so it doesn't defrost. Keep it safe. Bring only a small amount in with you, and then your partner could bring more in if you need more. So bring a minimal amount in, but yes, freeze it. And if you go to the leaflet that's on our webpage, then you'll be able to see it all there, black and white, talks about how to hand express and the storage guidelines as well. So it's all there for you, and it'd be lovely because I think you might be the first person who looks at it, because it has literally gone up this week. So it's a leaflet that's been in the making for a very long time, and we're delighted it's up and running now. So I'm scrolling back up because there's a few come in below. Let's see what else we've got. So Natalie, hopefully that helps. So yeah, collect it each day, pop it in the freezer. It'll be fine in the freezer. It could be there for 6 months, but it won't be, because hopefully you use it. And then bring in only a small amount and keep it frozen as long as possible. So Holly's come back and said thank you for my comments. And our next message, oops, sorry, I'm scooting up and down very badly here. Right, let's see. Sorry, I'm losing my messages. Right, so it's Jessica now. Thank you again. And one more thing, he's getting a little upset every time before passing a gas, crying a little bit, but just for a short time, and stops again, curling his legs while doing this. Could it mean this is tummy hurts? Well, I think we've talked about this on here before. Babies have no sort of what's the word I want to reserve. They tell it as it is. If their stomach hurts, they're going to tell you all about it. So, you know, if your baby's got a little bit of a gripe going on, they're going to let you know. Where you or I would just go, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, your baby's going to make a big song and dance about it, and that is completely normal. So as long as your baby is calming afterwards and is happy afterwards, then that's no concern. Unconsolable crying we would be worried about, but if a baby has a cry because it's got a bit of a stomach ache for a moment or two and then it passes, we would be perfectly happy with that and assume that's normal. It's your baby's only way really of communicating with you in many respects at this stage, so I would anticipate that it is fairly normal, Jessica. Obviously if the crying is ongoing and you can't calm your baby, then you would be looking at other reasons. But if it is something that is transient, comes and goes, baby happy afterwards, then I would not be concerned. It's just that they can be, not in a nasty way, but they can be a little bit of drama queens. They do want to tell you that their tummy hurts a little bit. So Jessica, I think from the sounds of it, your baby is probably fine and not to worry about it. And the thing is that you're there. Your babies don't know how to self-soothe, and you're the one in charge of soothing. So if they've got a tummy ache, sometimes babies love to be held in that sort of position, so there's a bit of pressure on their tummies. They love that position. It's a bit like a leopard in a tree, so that sort of position babies like, or putting them on your knee and patting their backs, and also the traditional way up here, and that pressure on their tummies makes them feel better. All these positions make the baby feel better, and just you being there makes them feel better, because you're so important, because these babies can't self-soothe. They need you, they need their caregivers to calm them down and help them cope with being in a new life and having been born. So it's helping them, and then it can be rhythmic, stroking and anything. They love patting on their bottoms. All these things will help calm your baby down, because they can't do it themselves. Babies cannot self-soothe. They do need you for this, and you can't spoil a baby. I haven't said that yet today. I think I say it every time I do these sessions. Don't forget, you cannot spoil your baby. Your baby cannot be loved too much, cannot be cuddled too much. You need to cuddle them and love them as much as you can. You are building their brains. You are giving lovely doses of oxytocin, which builds the baby's brain, and it's good for you and it's good for them, and it's a pain relief as well. So thinking about tummy upset, tummy ache, being stroked is a fabulous thing to do, and thinking about being in that position again and stroking their backs, they will love it. It's really calming and it will help them soothe. So and that's our role, to soothe our babies. So I hope that helps, Jessica. I think the one thing we want you to take from all these sessions is you cannot spoil a baby. They cannot be spoiled. You can't love them too much. Lucy said, sorry if this has been asked already. How long does breast milk last at room temperature, fridge, etc.? Also, can I mix expressions bags from different days? Thanks. Lucy, breast milk's amazing. It's fine at room temperature for up to 6 hours. You can pop it in the fridge for 5 days, and this is afterwards. 5 hours on the side, 6 hours on the side, 5 hours into the fridge. I'll get there in the end. 5 days in the fridge, 6 months in the freezer. I remember it as 6, 5. Okay, there's 6, 5, 6 is how I remember it. So I always think about 6, 5, 6. So it's 6 hours room temperature, 5 days in the fridge, 6 months in the freezer. So if you think about it from that point of view, it is a live product. It fights off bacteria. The reason that once you have frozen it, that we use it within 12 hours, because some of the protective properties that are there in breast milk when it's fresh are lost when it's frozen. It's still fantastic. It's still an amazing milk, but they are lost when it's frozen. So we tend to use express breast milk within 12 hours. If it's donated breast milk, that's been pasteurised, so we can keep that for 24 after it's been frozen. But if you've frozen your own milk, then we would ask you to use it within 12 hours of defrosting. You said, could you mix them? We'd normally suggest that you mix them from a day. So if you do, let's say Wednesday's milk all gets put together and then Thursday's milk gets put together, just because then you can have, that's one day's milk and that's the next day's milk. So from the point of view of keeping it for 5 days, it's much easier to know when, how long it is and how long it's been there. So we would normally say, do 1 day collection, the second day collection. But then think about when you come to defrost it, are you going to have too much? Depending on how much you're getting, because what you don't want to do is have to throw it away. It's such a shame when you have gone to the effort of expressing your milk and then end up having to throw it away. It's heartbreaking. So maybe not freezing it in too big an amount. And we often suggest that if you've got milk and you're giving it to your baby, that actually you put in the sort of an amount that you think the baby is very, very likely to take. Let's say your baby will take up to 60 and you've put 20 in, and then offer another 20 and then offer another 20. If you put it all in, if you put 60 or 70 in one go and your baby took 20 or 30 at that feed because they're not that hungry this time, then actually you're going to be throwing away the rest, because anything that's been in the baby's mouth then has to be thrown away, and that's really upsetting. So we would suggest to err on the side of caution and keep decanting and offering that bit more if the baby's still looking for more food. So don't offer too much. So from the freezing point of view, keeping it in smaller amounts is better for defrosting and not wasting, rather than storing it in big amounts. So I don't know how much you're getting, Marion, but see how you get on with that. We just scoot back up and make sure I answered all your questions on that one. So that was Lucy asking that question. So hopefully that helps. So we would normally do a day at a time, so freeze a day at a time. But if it's in big volumes, then be aware that you may be having to throw it away, which would be a real shame. So right, that was Lucy's, and it hadn't been asked, so it was absolutely fine. Moving on. Jessica's come said perfect, as always, very helpful. Thank you for your question, Jessica. We rely on them. Marianne's come. I breastfed my baby for 8 weeks now. Oh, well done. Some days it feels my milk supply drops and isn't enough for him. Is it possible? How can I boost my milk production? Well, sometimes your baby will go through a period of time where they're looking for more milk, and what they'll do is they'll drive your supply. So they'll feed and feed and feed and feed, and actually what they've done is they've pushed your supply up, and that's what they can do. So it might be that's what you've just had, and your baby's pushed the supply back up again a bit. If you want, the best way of pushing your milk supply is to pump as well, is to really get your baby feeding well, because they're the most effective milk remover of baby. And if you really still feel you need more, is be pumping after the feeds is what we would normally be suggesting. But if your baby is growing well, pooing and weeing appropriate to age, then you probably don't need to let your baby do it. Just feed them. You can feed them slightly more frequently, and that will push your supply. If you've got concerns about it, I'll recommend that you speak to someone again. Just have a chat with any of the people available, OBS, Abingdon Baby Cafe, latch, or us, and have a chat, and we'll go through what's actually happening and see whether it's whether your baby is just had a bit of a growth spurt and pushed your milk supply already, or whether you need to be doing any more to push your supply. But normally the first thing would be to either up the feeds or to add in pumping, or both. So see how you get on. So whether you actually need to or not. Erica said, what would you suggest for a tongue-tied baby regarding feeding until the issue is sorted? Depends on how well they're transferring milk, Erica. If they're not transferring milk well from the breast, you might need to be using a bottle as well. So that they are able to get the amount of milk, because we need to make sure they're getting enough calories in the day until it's sorted. And it can take a little bit of time afterwards as well. We know that it can take a few weeks for a baby to really work out what they're doing when their tongue tie's been released, because they are having to struggle with a different way of feeding, and their tongue feels different to them. So possibly might need to be giving milk in another way. You could try cup feeding. That's one way of doing it. It can be a bit messy, but it can be quite fun too. If you've got a good supply and you can afford to lose a bit, then that might be a way of going. There's a fabulous video on the Global Health Media with cup feeding on it. Global Health Media videos are available online. They are aimed at the world over, so they're very multicultural, but they're absolutely beautiful. And they do cup feeding on there as well. So you can have a look at that and see, but just making sure your baby's getting the calories that they need, so that we can, work on feeding afterwards and get breastfeeding really working well afterwards is what we'd be looking at for you, Marion. And keeping your supply going. Don't let your supply drop, because that's really hard to push back up again. So make sure that you are, if your baby's not doing it, that you're pumping, and then you're giving the milk in another way. Well, I hope that's answered your question there. But again, access all the support you can. And as I keep saying, the earlier you get help, the easier it is for us to turn problems around. So that was Erica who was asking about the tongue tie. Lucy's come back and said thank you. Emma said, my baby's now 4.5 months and she's still feeding at least every 2 hours, sometimes more frequently. She's gaining weight and peeing and pooing fine, but I'm worried about my supply being enough. What do you suggest, or is this normal? Babies feed for so many reasons, and it may not just be for food. I mean, if she's gaining weight beautifully, then we wouldn't have any concerns. Babies just love to know you're there. You make sense to them. You make the world a sense, a sense of the world. You're their link to the world outside, and babies love checking in. And we have had quite a few questions about frequent feeding. Babies, it's their you're their link, you're their grounding in this new life. So feeding frequently is not uncommon. As long as your baby is gaining weight appropriately, then we wouldn't think it was a supply issue. So I mean, it could be because the baby needs a bit more food, but it could also be that the baby actually loves that comfort and being close to you and having the closeness and comfort of you. So sometimes when it isn't a supply issue, then maybe trying a sling can meet those needs. Because if you think about it, babies don't expect to be put down, and actually a baby might be put down and start complaining, and a mother says, "Oh, the baby needs a feed," and actually the baby just wanted to be cuddled, and cuddling might have been all they wanted at that point in time. So as long as your baby is gaining well and pooing and peeing appropriate to ages you've mentioned, then actually try sling, see how you get on with the sling, and see if that meets your baby's needs, because sometimes that is all the baby wants, to be here rather than in a pram or a cot. That's not where they expect to be. I know in our culture here in Britain, we expect our babies to be in a cot or in a pram, but they don't expect to be in a cot or pram. All other primates carry their babies for the first 2 years, and our babies know no different. They expect to be carried for the first couple of years. So having a sling might give you that chance, might give you those breaks if there are no concerns about weight gain. But if there are concerns about weight gain, then meeting the baby's needs with those feeds would be important, and then thinking about pushing up your supply if need be. I'm just checking this, if I've covered everything you've put on there, Emma. I think try sling, see how things are going, but obviously be aware of what the weight's doing. I know it can be quite difficult to get babies weighed, but contact your health visitors and see, I don't know when you last had your baby weighed, but what we're looking for, you said she's a little girl, is that we're looking for her to be gaining somewhere in the regions of 20 to 30 grams on a daily basis. That would be, thereabouts. I mean, she's 4.5 months old. That might be plateauing a little bit, but, plotting her on her graph. Is she following her graph? And as long as she's following her graph, then it might be that it's not that she needs food and that she just wants you to be close and cuddling her. And as I say, a sling might be the answer in that one. So have a go with that and see how you get on. But I would suggest just check the weight's okay if you haven't had it checked recently. So that was Emma. Ooh. I keep scooting up and down today. I'm not doing a very good job on this, so bear with me. That was Emma's question. So Elizabeth said, I think you mentioned it earlier, but just want to double check. Is the advice that once a baby's drunk from a bottle, even if freshly expressed, then the rest of the milk in the bottle expires after 1 hour rather than 6? Yes, I'm afraid so. Because there's going to be a flow. So if you imagine a bottle and you've got the baby feeding from the bottle, there's going to be a two-way flow. So bacteria is going to go into the bottle. So we do suggest that within an hour it's thrown away. So that's why we'd normally say to you, if you've let's say you express 60 and you don't know how much the baby's going to take, put maybe 20 or 30 in. Baby takes it, that's fine, put a bit more in, but don't put it all in one go, just in case the baby doesn't take the whole lot. So have a bottle that's the reserve and the bottle that you're using to feed, rather than giving it all in one go, because we don't want to keep it. It's when it's freshly expressed, sitting on the side, it's fine for 6 hours. The bacteria count actually drops once it's first expressed. But if you imagine that if you're then putting the bottle into the baby's mouth, you're introducing more bacteria. So that's what we are trying to avoid. So yeah. So think about having a bottle that you're feeding from and a bottle that you're decanting from, so that you don't have to throw it all away if it's not more drunk. So hopefully that explains that. Erica said, thank you. Emma's come and said, thank you, that's reassuring. I'll try more cuddles. Brilliant. So as I said, you can't cuddle them too much. You cannot spoil your babies. And what you're doing is you're building their brains. Remember, you're building these lovely babies' brains. That interaction that you're having all the time is fostering pathways in the brains, then all the neuro pathways, and you're making these fantastic new pathways in this baby's brain, and you're reinforcing them with all the lovely things you do with your baby. So it's very, very important. Jess has said, my baby started crying towards the end of the breastfeeding during the day rather than being satisfied and falling asleep. Sometimes she's wind, but often not. Any idea what could be happening? She's still gaining weight. Appropriate wet nappies and poo. Bear with me. And poos. Good question. I wonder what she's doing. So, what's happening with her. Sometimes they do. I mean, and are you offering the second side? Is she looking for more? maybe swapping her onto the other side, thinking about is, you've said she's gaining weight and appropriate wet and dirty nappies. Trying compressions. I don't know if you've tried those already, because that can give the baby a little bit more milk. So a compression is something you can do when you're feeding or expressing. So if the baby's on, I show you, if the baby's on at the breast, a compression is taking a really nice big handful and getting it round the breast as far back away from the chest wall as you possibly can, and in and hold, and you literally deliver a little bit more milk into the baby. So what you're doing is you're taking it from further back at the breast and you're just delivering that little bit more. Maybe that would help deliver a bit more into her mouth. Maybe babies love flow. Maybe that flow's slowed down a bit and she's thinking, oh, I want more than's coming right now. So, and you can work your way around the breast like you do when you're taught how to hand express. Think of the breast as a clock face and work your way around it. But what you'll do is when a baby's sucking, so they're doing suck, 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 you do the compression. Hold, hold, hold. She stops, you stop. She starts sucking again, you start again. Hold. She stops, you stop. She starts again, you go again. So its compressions are long, firm holds of the breast as far back away from the baby as possible. As you can see, I've got my hand a lot further back because otherwise you'll knock her off. And that will just give the baby that bit more milk from further back, and maybe that will keep her going, make her a little bit less grumpy, give her that little bit more. And when babies aren't really coming off the breast, this can often be helpful as well, because you're delivering that bit more milk. So if you think about the breast, the breast, that you've got tissue that goes right back, and so right back up into the chest wall, right under the arm, and you're accessing all of that for the baby and you're helping them get it. So maybe try doing that. I mean, the fact that she's gaining weight, Jess, and that her poos and wees are normal is really reassuring, but maybe just try some compressions and see if that gives her that little bit more toward the end of the feed, that she's a little bit happier. And let's hope it's just a phase that's going to pass. I know I've said that a few times today, but it's often the case with babies. They'll do something for a few days and then it changes. And things level out and settle out. But so see how you get on with that. And the wind, I mean, if she's been crying before she's gone on to feed, she might have wind. If you think about being at the breast, there's no air in the breast, so they don't get air unless they're releasing the vacuum, unless they're struggling with that. So if there's any clicking or anything, then maybe she's getting air, but that wouldn't normally be the case. So obviously try compressions and winding her afterwards and see how you're getting on and observe what's happening. And as long as she's hopefully maintaining weight and poos and wees, hopefully it'll pass soon and things will get a bit better for you. So good luck with that, Jess. Elizabeth's come back and said thank you. Marianne's come back and said thank you too. So oh gosh, we're at 15:31 and we haven't even taken a breath. So we're over time. I don't know if there's any final flash of questions until next week. By all means send them through right now. Otherwise I shall thank you all for your wonderful questions. Hope that I've reassured those that I could. And for those that need to go and get some help, please go and access help. The sooner you get it, the quicker things turn around and the more difference we can make to feeding for you. It makes it much better if we can do it as early as possible. Jess is going to give it a go. Brilliant. That's great. Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye then, and it's been lovely having all your questions, and we'll meet again next week for the infant feeding session. Just so you know, they're all on OMVP. You can find them, all the old ones, if you want to, and access them there. But and as I said, the expressing leaflet's available now on our website. Go and have a look. Thank you very much for your questions, and we'll meet again next week. Bye.